There we go. All right, good morning, everyone. I'm calling this meeting of the Public Safety Communications Task Force to order. It is 11:18 on August 2nd, 2023, and I'm Barb Neal. As a reminder, the meeting's being recorded via Teams. The recording will be posted publicly following the meeting. So a quick roll call. Commissioner Morrison, good morning.
Good morning.
Paul White, hello.
Good morning.
Michael Wright, good morning. Yep. And Jim Mack, good morning.
Good morning.
And anybody else join while I was doing that? Not for task force members. Okay. So also present, of course, is our administrative support person, Callie Audette. I see Mandy Wooster and Corey Chase on the line. Mandy, do you want to introduce yourself quickly?
Hi there, my name is Mandy Wooster. I do policy development for the Department of Public Safety and had some involvement in the regional dispatch working group.
Okay, thanks. Welcome. Corey Chase, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Corey Chase. I'm the new director of the Radio Technology Services Division here at the Department of Public Service. Public service, I'm public safety, excuse me. I'm going to keep tripping over that. So sorry. I'm coming from public service and I'm going to trip over the same acronyms.
Yes.
Thank you.
At least you can stick with DPS, right?
Right,
And
exactly.
You might
right.
be mostly right. So, okay, well, welcome, Corey. And let's see, it looks like two members of the public. Kim Cheney, good morning.
Morning. Glad to see everybody back at work.
Thanks for joining us. And it looks like Stephen Whitaker may be on the other line. Good morning, Stephen. We're not hearing you, Stephen, if you are saying anything. Okay.
Right,
I'm going to move
on.
Yep, we're going to move on to a next agenda item is approval of the agenda. So the agenda was distributed earlier this week to task force members. Do any task force members have changes to the agenda?
I do not.
I don't have changes necessarily, but I didn't know if there was an update. I know it's only been a week, but I didn't know if there was an update on the project management plan. If you wanted to add that, if you want to add that, sure.
Yeah,
Sure.
let's add that. We'll do it right after approval of the minutes.
Okay.
Okay. Project management. Okay, so that's been added. Okay. Hearing nothing further on agenda changes, we'll move on to approval of the minutes from the July 27 meeting. Those were distributed earlier this week and are also available on the task force webpage. Is there a motion to approve those draft minutes?
So moved.
Okay,
Second.
Second. I didn't hear.
Yes, I'll second.
Paul, okay. Any discussion on the minutes?
My only comment was I noted regarding the executive session, it's noted what time we came out of executive session. I didn't know if it should also mention what time we went into executive session. And I'm afraid I did not go back and look at the tape to see what time that occurred. And if it's not necessary at all, I'm fine with that too.
I think it would probably be good to note when we went in, so that people have an understanding of the amount of time we spent there.
Yeah, I can do that.
Kelly can go in and make that adjustment.
Yep.
So I would withdraw my motion to approve the minutes. I would instead offer a motion to approve the minutes once that change is made, that edit is made, to add the time that we went into executive session.
I'll still second that.
Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, and it looks like I can see all the task force members now. So all in favor, raise your hand, please. 1, 2, 3, 4. I see you, Jim, and I in favor as well. No one is opposed and no abstentions. So the minutes are approved. Moving on then to our newly added agenda item. And Commissioner, I will turn to you for the most recent update on this, on the project management piece.
Sure, thanks. As this group indicated, it was their preference last week to secure a project manager up for the task force. The internal team at the state of Vermont has been running in 2 lanes simultaneously, and in fact, they're meeting right now upstairs from here to put together, I believe it will result in an RFP going out for a project manager. However, they were still, they still had not exhausted the list of project managers on retainer. So there's 2 lanes that they're running in at the same time. And I hope to have an update on that within the next 24 to 48 hours.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Congressionally directed spending. Commissioner.
Thank you. As we discussed at the last meeting, we have a deadline at the end of August to submit the next round of documents to secure the $9 million in congressionally directed spending from FY23 as earmarked by Senator Leahy. There are 2 proposals that we would bring to this group to offer for consideration, and also if other members have a 3rd or 4th option we could consider. I believe at the last meeting, we talked about the fact that a computer-aided dispatch system would benefit the entire first responder community. So to be brief about this, CAD would be option 1. Option 2 would be to enhance the current state infrastructure in a variety of ways, which you receive documents on. This is a plan that the Radio Technology Shop has worked on. We worked on it for another reason several months ago. It has been buffed up. It still is a draft. This is not fully baked, but the general direction should be clear from the documents you received, that the intent would be to maximize, replace aging technology, maximize the resiliency and the reach of our system to be able to serve the entire first responder community. I think this is a supposition, but I think it's a good supposition that whatever the long-term solution is going to have the state-owned infrastructure as the backbone and a lot of parts and pieces that can connect and use the infrastructure of the state for their own comms. Corey, do you want to say anything more about that? Because you're a little more articulate on that than I am.
Certainly. Excuse me, sorry. Having trouble with my camera here today. Sorry about that. In general, the proposal that we put forth from RTS would enhance the capabilities of the existing network and add a few new sites to expand the reach of the network. It's important to note what Commissioner Morrison said, that this is a backbone that is primarily intended to support the VSP network, but it has many ancillary benefits that could be used to support other networks as well.
So that would be the option 2, and option 2 can be further refined before it is submitted. The finite details and exact budget do not have to be submitted with this round of approval, but we have to be, you can't change course entirely after this round. So I think that's all I have, and I'm confident that the task force members might have questions or comments to add to that. But it seems to me we should be able to, within the next week, we should make a decision, because we still have to write a bunch of stuff up and get it in by the end of the month.
I wonder too if there might be other ideas that task force wants to be considered for these funds.
I'll go.
Paul?
So, you know, I don't profess to be an expert in this, in the technology field, but I worked with it for a long time. And as my layman's view of the documents that we got yesterday, as Corey mentioned, it does add 3 new antenna sites, one in Ferdinand, one in Lunenburg, and one down at in Warren. But none of those really are the areas where we're looking at expanding to creating regional dispatch. And I don't know what a third option would look like because I don't have the ability to design a system like that. But I would think that we would. I understand that I went back and reread the legislation, and essentially the commissioner is obligated to consult with the task force, but it's ultimately up to her as how this congressionally directed spending is spent. But I would think we would want to maximize whatever we can do to put us as far down the road as possible towards our goal of regional dispatching, and, in my layman's way of thinking, I would think we would want to focus on new towers or new microwave links, spurs or extensions from our current network that's going to put us into the areas where we want to encourage these new regional dispatch centers to grow or current centers to expand. And until we have an expert tell us where those centers should be located, we don't really know where they should go.
I don't disagree that there's going to be another iteration of how we strengthen, lengthen the communication infrastructure, right? There has to be, but going beyond what is, in our estimation, the backbone of the system is premature. That's sort of the conversation that we've been having internally is how do we maximize the backbone without trying to jump ahead of the consultants that we're about to hire and make assumptions about where towers should be. And the other, I also am not a techie and don't know a whole lot in this area, but I am clear that just putting up new towers is not necessarily helpful because different technologies have different tower requirements. So the same thing that you would have that for LMR may not be good for cellular, or so that a tower is not a tower is not a tower. And that's that's why building the backbone seems to make sense. And then in the next round, once we have a plan, going more site specific makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't disagree with any of that. I'm not certain. I mean, I don't question all of the things on the list that we were sent yesterday. I don't question all of that stuff is probably needed and would be beneficial to harden the system and enhance the system. I just don't really, until we know where we're headed with regional dispatch, I don't know if those improvements are going to help get us towards regional dispatch or not. I mean, it isn't going to hurt. Strengthening the backbone isn't going to hurt, but I don't know if it's going to move us, in the direction of regional network. That said, I don't know if I have a better option. You mentioned option 1, you mentioned being CAD. My understanding was there was some kind of a study being done of the current Valcor. I won't call it CAD because it's not, it's an RMS, but
Not a CAD, right?
it's right. Has the decision been made that is not going to be viable as a CAD system for the future? Are we definitely looking at a new CAD system statewide?
No, there's been no, first off, Valcor is not a CAD. Second off, the study
Right,
was about the
right.
security environment. It was not about the functionality of Valcor. It was about the security and uptime, downtime. So it was a security assessment, not a functionality determination. So no, there's been no pronouncement of any type about the future of Valcor or another one, but there has been discussion from the field, particularly from fire and EMS, that they would like to have a CAD function available. So that's why that need was being raised up to the task force as a potential use for the funds.
And is there any estimate on, would this $9 million in congressionally directed spending touch that? Would it be overkill? Would that, we know what the cost of a new statewide CAD system is?
We don't. We know
Okay.
rough ballparks, but they're not. And it's a little bit, it's an a la carte menu, right? You can
Right.
get a CAD for probably a couple, 3 million, but it depends on the bells and whistles that you want. And so until it went out for bid, we would not know that it's how much left over there would be. It would be shocking to believe that it would be over 9 million. But
I would hope not.
What
Okay.
happens if there is money left over? Does it just go away, or can it be repurposed, or?
I don't know the answer to that. I believe it goes back to the federal government, but if there are alterations to your scope of your work within the performance period, which is the performance period is when you have to expend it by, then they might allow you to amend your application, and it really would be up to the COPS technology office.
Okay, thanks.
So I guess my view on this is this should be a major priority. It's a pet peeve of mine. I think we have the worst CAD system ever. We're in like 1970 technology. I could give you tons of quality review cases that have all related to poor communication coming from E911 all the way down to our dispatch center. Barbara and I have exchanged lots of emails of this over the years. So whatever we got to do to enhance and improve the CAD system to make it a system that communicates in real time from the dispatcher, having the real most up-to-date information across all responders and dispatchers in a most reliable way is what I'm really pushing for in this thing. Beyond radio towers and everything else, we need a robust CAD system, and we don't have that today.
Jim, any thoughts?
And I guess let me just say one, isn't that part of the RFP to look at that? So is the question about just specific money? Or isn't it in the RFP that they would be looking at what would be best for the whole state from a software CAD perspective?
There, it's not mutually exclusive of one another, but the RFP asks for recommendations on the best practices, so. It doesn't ask specifically the question of make a recommendation about a CAD system. It's not that granular.
That's good, yeah.
Okay.
Jim, what are your thoughts?
Well, I'd love to have a real CAD system functioning here right now. I don't believe you could buy a CAD system. I'm probably going to guess it's in the $3 to $4 million range, but and that's just a wild guess. But I don't think we could put together a proposal here in your timeline for a CAD system.
Yeah, I think that's also a limiting factor in that we could probably work up enough specifics to get a response in by the end of August date. But in terms of actually going out to bid and determining the correct vendor and implementing something statewide to the point where we satisfy the performance period. So the performance period is December of 2024. That's when it ends. It would be aggressive to think that we could roll out a new statewide CAD before December of next year.
We get confirmation that it's the money has to be encumbered, right? Not spent.
I don't think we've gotten that confirmation, but we can get that before next week.
To be honest, I think it's going to be a huge task to even find a CAD system that will serve the entire state, police, fire, and EMS across all agencies. I'm not confident we're going to find someone that can satisfy everybody's needs.
Okay. So we don't have
Yeah, I wish we
two
had the other
members
two
of the
members,
task
yeah.
force.
The two that are probably the most tech oriented of the task force.
Right.
But not here. Right.
Right. We can table this and I can come back with the answers about the COPS grant and encumbered versus spent. And we can look at as I said, this was a drafty draft of the plan coming out of RTS and DPS. We can refine that based on some of this feedback and we can revisit both of them, I'm assuming next Wednesday. And then we would have to go in one direction or another as of next next Wednesday, because we need time to get that paperwork in and a budget in, a preliminary budget, etc. Does that sound reasonable to table it until next Wednesday?
Yeah, it does to me.
Yeah, I think that would be like you said, that would be this would be the last time we can table it.
Yeah, oh, you're right about that. Go ahead, Corey.
Thank you. This is Corey again. It would be helpful to me if we could get some feedback from the community about which areas, if we wanted to think about amending the RTS proposal to consider alternative, other expanding the network in other directions. It would be helpful to get some feedback about where that would be, where we should focus. What we were focused on in this initial round that we were tasked to do quickly is trying to find existing towers in areas where we have a known problem with the network. Given the time frame of coming up with the proposal and implementing the proposal, it's our view that constructing new towers isn't the best use of this particular funding availability, and it's best to expand the network on existing towers. However, if we had a sense of where the community was sensing a lack, that would help us in evaluating the proposal. And that doesn't need to be said in this meeting. If we could get that feedback offline, that would help me a lot.
Yeah, I think that's useful. Is if anybody wants to offer feedback about that they can send it to Corey and we can look at it in the context of a revised version of what you received in advance of this meeting.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I don't know that any of us sharing anecdotally where we think the weak points are isn't necessarily going to be helpful compared to, this RFP for the subject matter expert we want to hire. That's what they're supposed to do, is take an inventory of everything that currently exists and tell us where the weak points are and where we should be expanding. And that unfortunately is weeks, if not months away. Which would make it way too late for the congressionally directed spending.
Correct.
Right.
That's why we were focusing on, again, the backbone that we know can be made more resilient, can be stronger, it can be better, right? So that everything you just said, we've had this circle conversation inside our shop before putting this together, and it's a chicken or egg conversation. So anyway, okay, so we'll come back to this next Wednesday unless anyone has anything else on this. We can move on to the next item on the agenda.
I have one question.
Yes.
Paul, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but why are you worried about not being able to find a CAD that serves all, the needs of all responders? Is there a short answer to that, or some experience you have?
Well, maybe I'm speaking out of turn. Maybe Jim might be better to speak to that since he works in a dispatch center. But I think back to when we went, I know this was ages ago, 30 years ago, when we first went with Spillman, and we were told that when we took Spillman, which had been up until then basically a county-wide dispatch, a CAD. And we were the first ones in the country to try to apply it on a statewide basis. And we almost broke it. Spillman told us that we were the first. They weren't sure that they could even make it work. It did. It worked for a long, long time before somebody had the bright idea of leaving and going to Valcor. But there's so many competing needs and demands for the different services and so many different agencies. You know, right? I mean, I know a lot of people like Valcor because they can pretty much tailor it to be, you know, they can create their own call types, their own incident types, but which is nice that you can tailor it, but yet when you try to come up with when you're trying to collect stats and compare apples to apples and oranges to oranges, it's not really
Right.
great when you've got everybody creating their own incident types. You know, maybe I've been out of the world for a while. Maybe there are products out there I'm not aware of. It just, I think trying to satisfy not only all three disciplines, police, fire, and EMS, but also every agency in the state, with everybody wants their own little tailor-made thing. I think we'll find it difficult. But
Okay, so I get better where you're coming from on that, and certainly we've seen challenges in trying to meet those various needs, like from the 911 perspective and also from the dispatch floor perspective in some cases, you know, who wants
Right,
things
right.
done in a certain way. So, okay, thanks for that explanation.
And there's got to be robust systems out there now, 2023. There's county-based models that do fire-based, fire, EMS, and police models. I mean, the technology has got to be there. So I would think there's a system that's robust that would meet our needs.
There's a number of systems out there that probably would meet our needs. The issue ends up being on the backside, programming those systems to handle those needs. And that's what what Burlington wants and what, Lincoln Fire wants here is two different things.
Right.
But you're going to have to do the programming behind the scenes to get it to function the way you want it.
Right. And being in a position now of running a statewide system, right, in the 911 system, it needs to be consistent across the entire operation. That's easier done with 911 than with dispatch. So, okay.
Okay. I think
Ready
we're
to
ready to
move
move
on?
on to public comment.
Okay, so public comment. We do have a few members of the public here. If you could indicate if you'd like to speak, raise your hand or something to indicate so. Okay. I see Kim Cheney.
Hi. It seems to me that towers can be used for various forms of communication. We're going to need LTE, land mobile, and microwave communications. And those towers, if new towers are built, it would seem to me could be conformed to each system in some way or another. So you don't need one tower for LTE and another tower for microwave. At least I don't think so. And you can't do any of it. You can't have any CAD system unless you have the infrastructure to do it. And it seems to me that the towers are going to be what we need first. If we can buy a lot of equipment, but if we have no place to put them, it's not going to help us. That's my uneducated view of it.
Thank you for your comments.
My daughter is head of emergency communications in her home school system and wanted to sit in here. She's denying her expertise.
Good morning, everybody. I am a graduate of Montpelier High School. I currently live in Virginia, and Virginia has a robust threat assessment program for mass casualty events, mass shootings. And I've attended the National Threat Assessment Conference 2 different times. And when Dad told me he was sitting in on this morning, I just wanted to add to your thinking that the mass casualty events, a lot of times there's failures in communication that increase the number of casualties, fatalities. If you look at the Parkland Marjorie Stoneman Douglas after action report, it's really heartbreaking how many communication failures happened and how long it took to get responding officers on the scene. And so I just support your community doing anything that you can to consolidate communications. If you could get a problem-solving group together out of all the fiefdoms so that people could really talk about what they need and maybe come up with some common language so that they're not stuck in their own silos and wanting their own things. If you have robust statewide communication and you don't even know what you're preparing for, you don't know if you're preparing for a mass shooter or a flood or an earthquake or a hurricane, but if you have everybody on the same page before any of those things happen, I mean, you all know you're going to save lives. And I just wanted to share that. And if anybody wanted to look up the principle of the, I think it was Fairfield, Vermont, where they caught the young man in New York, or it was Rutland. They caught the young man before he went to shoot up the high school. I think it was in Rutland. There were a couple people that came and spoke to the National Threat Assessment Conference, and they had a lot of important thoughts about communication and how good communication can prevent those kinds of incidents. So those are some people in Vermont that it might be worth looking up. Thank you very much for listening.
Well, thank you for the comments, and sorry, I had a little confusion. I thought you were one and the same with your comments, so I didn't acknowledge you at the beginning. So we appreciate your input, though. Thank you.
Thank you.
Margarita Grady.
Okay. Okay, Stephen, would you like to comment?
I'd like to know who the last commenter was, though. I didn't hear that.
My name is Margarita Grady. I'm a graduate of Montpelier High School, and I currently live in Virginia. And my daughter attends the University of Vermont, so I do have some skin in the game in terms of keeping people safe.
Oh, thank you. So I want to respond to a couple of things. I did send a concept out to some of the members and the commissioner that emphasizes towers. I've been, talking to a lot of folks, and the need to accelerate pilot projects that have to be approved before the end of this year, and the areas where where additional tower capacity would serve multiple uses, such as densifying the network to address problems with the P25 conversion that the Department of Public Safety is wrestling with, to infill cellular dead zones, to support and include densified LMR radio for regional dispatch, and to connect to the microwave backbone for third level failover. Makes a whole lot of sense, especially in the sense that state-owned towers can be made available in a way that generates revenue, ongoing revenue, to support regional dispatch operations and maintenance. So I believe that targeting infrastructure investments into areas that we envision expanding in the next year or two, if this money has to be spent by the end of 2024, we should focus it in areas where we know that will create the greatest relief from the Department of Public Safety's dispatch load, and that's Rutland and Addison counties. So the idea that CAD can run without LTE coverage is kind of a disconnect. I heard, I think it might have been Michael White speak to making CAD a priority over towers, but CAD absolutely requires automatic vehicle location, which runs on LTE. So you can't have fully functioning CAD system without knowing where your assets are in real time. So this whole exercise is kind of a cart before the horse because of our delays in getting the task force convened and delays in getting the RFPs out. And so now we're up against the wall, and this is all too typical for Vermont's planning. And so we need to we probably need to spend some, not to exceed $10,000 on a contract or two to get some expert help. None of the folks that are presenting these public safety proposals, throwing years of ideas for upgrades at the wall and seeing what sticks. None of this has been vetted through a needs assessment or a engineering expert. So I'm concerned that we should probably focus on no-brainer investments such as towers and small cells and generators and compact equipment sheds, et cetera, that we know will serve all users going forward. And that was typed up and sent out to some folks this morning, and I'm a little surprised that it didn't get mentioned. Again, the project management is essential, and it should have been on board already. And you're going to need both politically savvy, experienced project manager, as well as certified Project Management Institute experts for scheduling. This is going to be a very complex task over the next several years, and we are behind the 8 ball right now with making haphazard decisions to meet this August 28th deadline. So Commissioner, you're free to share what I wrote this morning, or I dictated and corrected about the tower logic. That presents the greatest opportunity and the greatest flexibility about where we locate them post deadline. I guess that's enough for now.
So just to be clear, I want to make sure that for the record, there is nothing haphazard about an August deadline. This money was applied for over 1.5 years ago when we were on a very different path. And it was intended to be subgranted to willing regional partners. The federal government, in its wisdom, pushed it to us through a stream of funding called COPS technology that disallows subgrants. That's why we are in the position we are in. So I just want to be clear that the Department of Public Safety has not been sitting on its hands. We proactively sought the money, got the money, and now we have some constraints that were not foreseen, and we had to wait to see how the legislative session played out. The other thought that I would like to offer to the group as we consider more towers, less towers, I'm going to defer to Corey after he contemplates what Mr. Whitaker has offered, et cetera, is there was a plan before our elected leader, our legislature, this year for $10 million worth of basically that, more towers. And they declined to fund it. So it was not a priority for the legislature. So I just want to put out there that it's not that more towers weren't thought about inside DPS, but the appetite for that was not strong in the most recent session. So we're not trying to do an end run around what our elected body, what their decisions were. And I think it would be something we would have to think about to be perceived as doing an end run around what their wishes were. So just putting that out there.
I didn't mean to suggest that an end run or haphazard in the DPS approach. The legislature was asked for 10 million, 50 million prior in session for cellular enhancements. Those were zeroed out in the budget, but what was put forth in the way of regional dispatch projects was not a plan at all. It was basically whatever, proposing entities that's why the legislature, redirected this path. So again, I didn't mean to suggest that the Department of Public Safety had thrown a haphazard. I think that the collection of the wish list of microwave improvements is not aligned with the regional dispatch project that this task force was created to supervise. So that's kind of where I'm creating the distinction.
Thank you. I think that we can digest that feedback and the other written feedback you proposed earlier. And as I said, we will bring another draft back next week. And I'm working right now to try and get an answer on the end of the performance period for the COPS technology grant. So absent any more public comment, perhaps we should move to executive session.
I do want to check in. We have someone with area code 401. Is that you, Philip Sisk? If you're
Okay.
speaking, you're muted. Okay. Hearing nothing. Yes, I think we can move on to executive session. So I want to make sure I get this correct. Paul, make sure I'm getting this correct. So we would entertain a motion that the task force finds that premature general public knowledge regarding the content of the RFP would clearly place the task force at a substantial disadvantage. Do we have a motion on that?
So moved.
Sure.
Seconded.
Jen and Jen, okay. Did you get all that, Kelly? Okay. Paul, do we do discussion on this?
Yes.
Okay. Is there any discussion?
No.
No.
Okay. And I can see everybody. So all in favor? Aye. Say aye or raise your hand. Thank you. Everybody's raised their hand. No one is opposed, no abstentions. And so the next piece of this would be, we'll entertain a motion to move to executive session for the purpose of discussing the RFP for subject matter expertise. Commissioner, do we have anyone that we would like to invite to executive session?
I don't know how that works. Do we say we're going to invite someone to executive session?
We do, if it's
Right.
anyone other than the task force and Callie.
I think we're just reviewing the work that we talked about that was in motion last week, so I don't believe we need to invite anyone else
All right, so the motion would be
to
to
move to executive session.
session for the purpose of discussing an RFP for subject matter expertise.
So moved.
So moved. Yep.
Michael, and a second by Jen. Okay. All in favor? Raise your hands, please.
It's 12:01,
Okay,
Kelly.
Everyone is in favor. And it is 12:01. So we will move to, there is a new link for executive session that we can all leave this meeting and go into that meeting.
Very good.
Can I
Thank
ask you, do you anticipate taking any action after executive session? Like voting
setting a
to
new
issue
meeting.
the
Setting a next meeting date.
Oh, why don't you do that now? So we, those of us.
Yeah, we've already had a motion to move to executive session, so I think
Steve,
we'll stick to the
I'll
agenda.
text it to you. I'll email it to you, okay?
Yep, thanks.
All right.
I'm going to
Thanks.
stop the recording also, just, you know.